Hello, hello, hello. My name is Karita Robert Green, and welcome to the Unwrap Your GIFT podcast, the show where we dance in conversation about all things to do with life, how to find your gifts, and hear stories from inspirational people around the world. You will learn how to celebrate who you truly are, unwrap your gifts, and step into your true, authentic power. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Welcome to season 2 of the Unwrap Your Gift podcast. This season is all about legacy. What is your legacy? Thank you to everybody for tuning in so far. I'm so excited to have you. Today, we are joined by the amazing Shoonyo Vishal. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Karita. Glad to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us today. For those of you who do not know who Shoonyo is, I am going to share a bit of information. As a spiritual coach, Shoonyo empowers leaders to find bliss and live their fullest potential. Through personalized coaching, he helps individuals to bring clarity into their life. He has found joy in coaching international cricket stars and multimillionaire business owners, embracing the opportunity to mentor and inspire greatness, but beyond spiritual seekers. He believes that material gain is just a side effect of finding the real treasure within, finding your spiritual essence. Wow, 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 wow. Thank you for being here today. I would love for you to just share a bit more about your journey so far. How did you get here?
How did I get here? So, where do I start?
Start where you want to start. We're just having a general chat and just sharing the journey.
Yeah. So, in 1956, I'm joking. I was joking in 1950. No. Okay. So, I was living a normal life. As in, I did my education. I'm an engineer by education, which I completed in India, in my city, Pune. Living with my parents and my elder sister, a happy, cozy family, um, doing my own thing, like every Indian in those days used to do. Get your education, get on a job, earn some money, set your life, and so on. There was something happening parallelly along with my education, though, which I'll come to in a bit. But here goes the education bit. I complete my engineering. I get into a corporate job, which is in the IT field. No surprise there. And and soon enough, within a year and a half, I moved to the UK. Some part of it in Birmingham and most part of it in London, where I carry out my corporate work as a business intelligence manager for about 10 years. So that's how the corporate life goes. And I love it. I love the life of London. I love what I'm doing there. I love the high-flying job, suits everywhere, professional environment, and so on. Now, what was happening parallelly, like I said, going to the parallel life that I was living, was I got interested in spirituality, in meditation, with one single question in the beginning when I was age 12. And this question was, where do these thoughts come from? How come I'm thinking? And that got me going. That got me going a long way. It took about 18 years of my journey in the realm of thinking, neuro-linguistic programming, healing techniques, emotional freedom techniques, and philosophy, psychology, and so on and on and on. Until at one point when things were not making sense initially. Actually, for about 16 years, things did not make sense. There was so much information. There was so many contradictory philosophies, psychologists saying different things, and so on. A point came where all of it started making sense, when all the contradictions started collapsing into one reality. So the paradox of life remained, but the contradictions didn't. If that makes sense.
I was going to say, not
Um,
confusing at all.
yeah. Yeah. So that happened parallelly. And here I am. Here I
Wow.
am. I quit my corporate job. I switched to a totally different realm of life, sharing about the inner world, sharing about meditation, sharing about what is, initially I used to share about what is beyond the mind.
Mm.
But with time, I've seen that it is before the mind.
Ooh,
The silence that we get into
I
is
love
before
that.
the mind. So I started sharing that, running retreats and so on. And for last 11 years now, that's been my life,
Wow.
sharing this work, bringing peace to the minds of people.
Wow. There is so much to unpack in what you've just shared. And I'm going to start with your name. What does your
Mhm.
name mean?
Okay. So by birth, I was given the name Vishal, which means, which is a Hindi word, comes from a Sanskrit root from India, and Vishal means expanse, infinity, huge, the vastness, and so on. The name Shoonyo is an adopted name. I adopted it about 11 years ago. And that really means that there's another Sanskrit word, which is shunya, which means zero, which means nothing. And shunyo means nothingness. So the name holds two extremes of life. One is nothingness and the other is infinity. And although these look as opposites, I insist that these are one and the same thing.
And ultimately, it means nothing.
It means nothing.
Love it. I love it. Wow, very powerful. And for those of you and your journey, it just, I know there's a lot that you've made it very succinct, but there's a lot that happened. You went through corporate world and then you just had, it sounds like you had a spiritual awakening of some sorts.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Yeah, I
and
did.
yeah, I was gonna no, I'm sure because lots of people here, they're working in the corporate worlds, doing what their parents said, going to uni, going to work, and then feeling like there's something missing, there's more to life, and not quite sure exactly what it is. What's the point of doing all the work that I'm doing? I've got success, but I'm just not happy.
Yeah.
And then you started to talk about meditation. So do you want to just share a bit more about meditation and some of the spiritual practices that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I felt the same, by the way, when you said that some people feel this way. That is exactly me about 12, 13 years ago, right? And I have it that not shoving away the responsibility, not shrugging away the responsibility on the society, but collectively, we are brought up in such an environment that we go outwardly.
Mm.
And there has to be an ambition, there has to be an opinion that everybody has to have. If you don't have an opinion, you don't belong to the community around you. So there's a lot of strength that is demanded of us. There's a lot of opinionatedness that is demanded of us, which starts building a lot of stress in us. And then it shows up everywhere in spite of the ambitions coming true. There's a lot of ambition required. You cannot be non-ambitious in current society, especially in the metropolitans. And what I started seeing was that kind of life wasn't sustainable. I couldn't sustain. To give the reality of what happened around 15 years ago, maybe, is it all started with a broken heart, a broken relationship with me. The only love of my life that I ever had, and I got married to, it wasn't working. The marriage wasn't working. The relationship wasn't working, and I had no clue that I would be in a situation where this kind of relationship wouldn't work. You can say that I was in a bubble, thinking that relationships work, because when I look at my parents, they are the happiest couple on earth that I have seen of. And I didn't go out to survey further. So I was in a bubble of relationships work, and when I was challenged with this relationship and it wasn't working and it was falling apart, I fell apart. My heart was torn into pieces. And but then something else started happening. So there's a beautiful saying by a saint called Rumi, and he says, it's the breaking of the heart is where the light enters strong. Now, I didn't know this saying at that point, right? The light enters from into the broken heart, from the crack of the broken heart. And but I started experiencing this. Suddenly, when the only thing I had in my life, which was the relationship, started breaking apart, I was left with nothing but being absolutely honest to myself. What am I doing in life? What is that of extreme value that I have in my life? And I started questioning everything, including my corporate work, including my friends, my hobbies, everything, all of that, my ambitions. Inside of that, then philosophy and psychology that I'd been studying for about 8 years did not make sense, because there was nothing practical I could get out of it. There's nothing that could give me satisfaction. There were questions that philosophy could raise and psychology could raise, but I couldn't catch hold of anything of essence out of those. And this is when I started going within. So that's how my journey of meditation began.
Wow.
I got really, really clear that unless I find myself, unless I find who am I really, not the body, not the mind, not the thoughts, who am I really, this is not going to get resolved, and I'm going to live a miserable life, right? Miserable life with that broken heart. So yeah, that's how it began. And off I go into meditations. I tested lots of meditations. The first one was a meditation on death. What is death? What happens when a person dies? So suppose if I'm dead now, then what? Then what? What am I left with? Do my worldly possessions mean anything? And so on. Long story short, got into meditations, got very, I cut all the theory aside, left all the theory aside, and got to the crux of the matter. Or rather, got serious about getting to the crux of the matter. It took about 2 years for me to stay with such pertinent questions of who am I really? No, who am I? No, that's my name, that's my degree, that's my profession, who am I, in a sense, and so on. And one fine day, I don't remember what weekday it was, but one fine day, somewhere in the afternoon, 4:35 p.m., something opened up in a huge way. The space of nothingness opened up, and I could see that every contradiction that I thought was a contradiction in life were really two different concepts of my own mind in conflict with each other. So this inner conflict kind of disappeared into one reality, into one singularity, if you will, or nothingness, if you will.
Wow.
That's an experience. That's a spiritual experience. There have been several more spiritual experiences, not getting hooked to such experiences, but it kind of released something from me. Life was way more relaxed. In spite of me performing at a totally different level, totally higher level, life was really relaxed and performance went up. It's really weird how these things play up and show up.
Mm.
So that was my experience. That was the awakening experience.
And this is the thing, when you have some sort of awakening or or alignment with yourself, you get really specific. You said 4:35 p.m. That's a very specific time.
Somewhere between 4:30 and 5 p.m.
Yeah. But these things do happen to some people as well. So in terms of you mentioned retreats and meditation, like what type of work is it that you're doing at the moment?
Yeah, so the work started with retreats and meditations and workshops and corporate workshops. Um, and sometimes it surprised me how much the corporate world as well is available, is open to meditations and spiritual work. I thought it wasn't. In my corporate days, I didn't experience much of that, in the beginning days at least. So that was the work in the beginning. As time has passed, I've written a book. I've run several retreats across the globe in several countries. It came to me that when I work with people one-to-one, that is where I'm able to create a much deeper impact as compared to working in groups. I don't know what it is, but I do hear that that's an experience of many other teachers that I've got connected to. So then I started moving my work towards giving special attention to each individual and their journey, and holding them on their spiritual journey step by step for a few months. So they're taken good care of, and every subtle part of their mind and the complexities that seem to be complex is responded to, is seen clearly and resolved clearly. So that's what I do these days. I coach people. I call it spiritual coaching. And I coach especially people who are in business, who are business leaders or business owners. And people who are just business owners move to business leadership as they find this leadership within themselves with spiritual clarity. So yeah, that's what I do.
I love that. You help people to find their inner leaders.
Yeah, you can say so.
Brilliant. That leads on to the next question. So this series of podcast episodes is all about legacy. What is your legacy and what would you like to be known for? So what would you say is what is your legacy that you're building now?
So the legacy that I'm building now is bringing a balance in the inner journey and the external journey. I used to have this was another conflict that I had, that I can only achieve something in the outside world, which would be fulfilling my ambition or understanding the purpose of my life and having abundance in life in worldly terms. Or I can go on an inner journey. And traditionally, we can see that there's this huge gap that people have, whether it's the past and the present, or whether it's the East and the West. The East is known to have going into the caves and going on an inner journey and so on, and the West is known to have, majority, I'm not like labeling them this way, but majorly the West goes out and achieves huge things in the world and so on. My legacy is that both these things happen simultaneously. The more you go within, the more clearly you express yourself outside. And by express, I mean not just express in words, but express your life outside, express your desires outside. Desire not being something that is a no-no, but desire is something that you have come here to fulfill, live, let go of, and merge back into nothingness once the desire is gone. So both these journeys, within and without, like an infinity sign, support each other and work towards each other.
Wow.
So that's the legacy I would love to leave, or I'm creating, if you will.
That's very powerful. That's
The
very
spiritual, if I phrase it in one line, spirituality and materialism are not different.
wow.
Spirituality and materialism can go hand in hand. It's one life we're living. We don't have to live a conflicting life. We don't have to live a fragmented life. We can have a life of integrity where everything is equally significant or equally insignificant.
Got it. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. So for everybody listening, some of you may be thinking, what? What is he talking about? And some of you may be really getting it. And I invite you to just share for somebody who wants to start a spiritual journey or start to look within more, like what tips or techniques would you give them if they wanted to start meditation, for example? Have you got any tips that you could share?
Yeah. So for there would be different things that different people would do, and a reason that I've started working one-to-one with people is only when I understand where the person is really, what's the personality like, what phase of life are they going through right now, I can give a perfect thing that a perfect technique, if you will, that could take them from where they are to the space that they want to be in, that they desire, or with velocity, right? But there are a few things that people can take on at a generic level. And I'm going to share something that maybe many people who are listening might have heard about, right? But have a look at it from a scientific perspective, or from reality perspective, if you will, as if you're listening to it for the first time. A technique or a tool, the more effortless we can be, the more effortless it is to use a technique, the more simply we would be able to use it. Otherwise, we're not going to take that amount of effort, right? Now, if we take a tool which needs a lot of setup, have 10 things ready, have some certain kinds of light ready, have certain kind of environment to engage in, we won't be able to carry it in our lives. So you can do that in one of your rooms, have that environment ready, and meditate for 1 hour in the morning. But as soon as you're out of the room, don't have the support of the environment, you go to hell with life, right? You start being yourself in your reaction mode, right? So we've got to find something, and here come the subtleties. We've got to find something that we don't have to prepare for in order to access the space, the quiet space that we want to access within. Which means there has to be something which is natural to us. The technique or the tool has to come from something that is natural to us, something that we don't deliberately create or do or set up. And one such things which we always have with us as long as we are alive is our breath. Breathing is absolutely a no-brainer, and good that it is a no-brainer. Because if we had to think and breathe, God help us, we would fall unconscious 10 times or maybe 100 times a day because of, oh, I forgot breathing because I was so involved with so many other thoughts and so on. So breathing is something that is very natural to us. If we can start focusing on our breath, keeping the breath natural, not controlling the breath, not doing any breath work as such, but just being attentive towards our breath. Okay, this is the incoming breath, and this is the outgoing breath. And I would encourage the viewers and the listeners of this beautiful podcast. It's such a valuable podcast that you've created here, Karita, to maybe do this for a minute with us now. The breath normally coming in, naturally coming in, and naturally going out. And we're just aware, we've brought our attention to the breath. Here it comes in. And here it goes out. And another breath comes in, goes out. One more breath comes in, and the breath goes out. Now, even with those 3 breaths, you would see that the space quietens a bit, purely because we got our attention to one point, which is so natural and effortless to us. We are so aligned with the universe that's breathing breath into us that we become quiet. From this quiet space, then operating in the outside world is simple. Making that decision that you business owners out there want to make comes from clarity. You don't have to be too complex about it. Most complexity is something we have created, not the market out there. It's we have created in our heads. So bringing that quietness to our space and then choosing from there is what makes all the difference. Now that is one meditation which I can recommend anybody and everybody to fall in love with, like not just taste it. I won't say practice it, because practicing is again a little effortful. Taste it, and if you like it, fall in love with it, be with it, take it to your heart.
That is awesome. And you know, I feel a lot more as soon as I started to slow down and take those breaths, I was like, oh, I'm feeling quite relaxed. You know, feeling relaxed. And I love what you shared about not having to have the settings, because in my head, when you think of meditation, you think I've got to light the candles, clear the space.
Yeah,
And it's just, we can have meditation now. We could just breathe now, be conscious of our breath now and now and now. So that's
yeah,
super powerful with that tool that you just shared.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, amazing. And
Yeah.
in regards to, this is the Unwrap Your Gift podcast. It's all about empowering people to unwrap their inner gifts so they could step into their power. And I always love to ask our guests, what would you say is one of your gifts?
What is my gift? So my gift is being able to access this quiet space, no matter where I am and no matter how chaotic it is outside. And my gift is to be able to translate this to people, to show them that they can be this quiet as well. And that reminds me of one of the retreats that I had run, and it was named Stillness in the Storm. So my gift is to get people to see and experience that they can be in the middle of chaos, they can be in the middle of a marketplace, and they can still be quiet with it, not at the impact of all the chaos that goes around them, and operate from that quietness, maybe sprinkling a little bit of that quietness outside as well. So
Stillness.
that's my gift.
That is,
When that happens with a business owner, when that happens with a business leader, they really lead from that chaotic into that chaotic environment from that quiet space. So no matter how much chaos there's outside there, they are not increasing it with another thought or worry of theirs, but bringing a little bit of stillness to it, driving it in the direction that they want to drive it in. When this stillness is brought into a relationship, there is listening, there is silence, and listening to the other person, really getting them, allowing them the space to be how they want to be, even if it's chaotic in that moment, so that they can give it up and bring silence back into the environment, come to a silent space. And this is the silent space from which sprouts your self-expression, anybody's self-expression, and which goes outside, and sprouts love, which stays with you.
Just
Right. So
creating
that's
space.
that. If I have to say what's my gift, that's what I would say is my gift.
Wow. I'm just creating a space of silence.
Yes, and it's funny. When some of my clients, I call them clients sometimes, I call them friends sometimes, because they are fellow business people, right? When they for the first time come across silence, doesn't necessarily have to be us keeping silent externally. Silence can dance in their decisions, can dance in their strategies, can dance in their leadership. They're leading from silence, from a conscious space. It's a different experience they get. They get present to, oh, silence means silence within, and outside we can still dance. As if there is nobody dancing, but the dancer has merged into the dance. Now, is that getting too much?
I get you. I get you.
But yeah, that's the silence which can dance as well. In this conversation, there's so much silence, and yet there are so many words that point to silence, come from silence, bring silence, are an expression of the same silence.
Dancing in the silence.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. This is some deep stuff. Are you all listening? This is
Yeah.
very powerful. Go on.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Mm.
And it is not, it sounds deep, but if you have experienced even one moment of what is being shared here from the space of sharing, you will see that it is not complicated. It is deep, but it's simple. This is who we are. This is who we are beyond the curtains and the layers of the mind and the chaos of the mind and the thoughts, and all that we bring in the emotions and the meaning making that we do. This is who we are, really, silence. We are free to get into that chaos, but we are at the same time free to create from the silence. Yes. So if you've got even a little bit of taste of it, see that it is simple. Don't get discouraged by, oh, this is too deep stuff. No, it is not. You've experienced this. Every single person has experienced this. When you look at the moon at the night, when you look at a sunset, you've experienced the silence. The nature maybe supported you at that point, but the silence that resonated was within you, was within us. So it's not difficult. It's just there all the time. Maybe sometimes waiting for you to stop and come back to it. Reminds me of what you said, Karita, some time back. Stop, give up what's in the space and come back.
I hope everybody listening is getting something to take away, even if it's nothing.
Especially if it's nothing.
Awesome. So I always love to ask our guests, what would you say is one of your favorite quotes?
My favorite quotes, there are a few that I love. The one that stands out in this moment is a quote by Bruce Lee. So many people don't know this, but I'm a black belt in martial arts, and I've done Shotokan karate. I've done a merged style of two different styles of kung fu: Wing Chun's kung fu and Tai Chi Chuan. And as a child, I used to be a big fan of Bruce Lee, right? A diehard fan of Bruce Lee, and we used to watch his movies. Pause the movie. We used to have those tapes, videotapes in those days. So we used to rent those videotapes, watch the movies, pause the movies off and on, learn different techniques, practice those, and so on. Later in life, I realized it was not just about punching and kicking, but there was, Bruce Lee was a deep guy, right? He had a deep philosophy, and he was very close to Zen. So here's the quote that I love from Bruce Lee, which he shares in one of his interviews, by the way. And he says, empty your mind, be formless, shapeless, like water. Now, if you put water in a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now, water can flow or it can clash. Be water, my friends. He says with that smirk on his, with that smile on his face. And I love that quote of his. Empty your mind. He's not the only guy who said it, but but that only means it's such an essential essential quote or message. Empty your mind.
I'm sure many people who are listening can agree that sometimes the mind is so full. It's so full. So when it comes to thinking about emptying your mind, you're like, how do you empty your mind?
Yeah. How do you empty your mind? And it could be with simple recognition of how am I filling my mind? How am I filling it up? What am I filling it up? Start becoming conscious of there's nobody else filling our mind. When somebody says something that we don't like, we go, phew, I don't give a thought to that, and we reject it. So then when we accept some thoughts, it means we are responsible for how are we filling our mind with? What are we filling our mind with? How are we filling it up? So if we start becoming conscious of how am I filling up my mind, that could be a good start to inquire into how do I empty my mind? Maybe by not just filling it up with something. It could be that simple. May not always be that easy. But yeah, that could be one way of looking at it.
A great way. And being conscious of what are you actually putting into your mind? What are you watching? What are you listening to? Who are you surrounding yourself with? It's a powerful way to start to take some control over what's actually going into your mind. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what would you say is, as we're coming near to the end of the interview now, what are some of the things that you have coming up in your world?
Coming up in my world as in
What you're working on in terms of projects or business.
Yeah. So as of now, my attention is still at the business owners and business leaders that I'm working with, to really get into their world and understand what they're going through. We say, well, it might seem that I very simply say empty your mind. It does take something, and I'm not assuming or I'm not discarding anything that people actually go through in life. It can be sometimes so difficult. Running a business, having a stressful environment in business, meeting those deadlines, scaling up, having business management in place, right? Changing the strategy of the business, having leadership in place, not being able to lead certain departments. It can be so challenging. And in the midst of that, it can be so difficult to just get it, empty your mind. And it's very simple, very easy at that point to say, reject the entire thought and say, what do you know about me? What do you know what I'm going through? So it's not fair most of the times to just say, just empty your mind. that's not the carelessness with which I say empty your mind. But what I'm drawn to in the moment is really getting into the world of the business leaders and owners and see what they're going through and into their life practically show them, be with them, and resolve maybe one tiny thing and say, this is how you could apply emptying your mind in this particular instance. And from there, allow them or get them into a space for them to take a powerful decision. So really working closely with them and their minds and their experiences is what I've been drawn to for the last few years. And I'm loving it. So I would say I'm going to continue doing that for a bit. There's a book coming up around leadership, spirituality and leadership, spirituality in business. I still have a working title for it, and it's in initial stages. This would be my second book. The first book was Looking for the Obvious, which is a spiritual fiction thriller. So that's on the cards. The book is on the cards, but I think that's still in the future. It'll take some time to do proper justice to it. So as of now, that's what I'm doing, getting into the world of business leaders, and from there, step by step, showing them that this is how spirituality can bring power to your business and your leadership.
Sounds awesome. Sounds awesome. And what's one message that you'd love to leave with the audience?
One message I'll leave my audience with. Let me create it. Be a man or a woman of substance. Let go, say no, not just let go, but say no to theory. Life is too short, live it. Say no to theory. Bring practicality to life. Anything you learn, even if it's spirituality, bring practical spirituality to life. Don't just go for theory. That's one message, and that's where substance lies. Be a man or a woman of substance. Like really bring it to practical life, not just a concept in the head.
Wow.
If that makes sense. If you speak about meditation, don't just speak about meditation. Really do it. Be with your breath. If that's the meditation you're following, really do it. Really be with it day in and day out, in the middle of chaos, in the middle of your critical situations in business. Like really be it, right? Live it. So that's one message I would love to leave. And even if a tiny bit of this supports you, helps you, for all the viewers, I'd be really, really happy if it makes even a tiny bit of difference in your life. I'd be really happy, and I would feel obliged. I feel grateful that I could serve you in that regard.
So awesome. And how could people get in contact with you if they wanted to stay in contact, your book, or how could they reach you?
So the first point of contact would be my website, which is shoonyo.org, SHOONYO.org. And there are other websites mentioned on this site itself, which would be lookingfortheobvious.com, or for the corporate workshops, that's another website, and so on. So they could get connected from there. I think there's also a space where they can ask me a question. We call it Ask Shoonyo, which I can respond to, and in the message, if anybody who's listening, you want me to get in touch with you, or my team to get in touch with you, leave a note, leave your email or your phone number, and we'll get in touch with you.
Amazing, amazing. Well, you have been a fantastic guest. I've really enjoyed having you on the show today.
Thank you, Karita. You are an amazing host. You make the space so relaxed, and you make it seem so simple and so easy driving through. I couldn't have expressed myself better if I was on my own, but you guided me through the entire interview, if you will, or the podcast, so simply, so easily. That's your space. It's your space. That's your gift, and I love your gift. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you everybody for watching or listening today. It's been such a journey. I'm feeling very peaceful at the moment, very still. I'm going to definitely be bringing some stillness to the chaos that sometimes surrounds me, and I hope you do too. And I would love to leave by saying subscribe to the YouTube channel, and also make sure you definitely follow us on YouTube and LinkedIn. And remember, we are all born with a gift, and we all have special skills, talents, and gifts that we can use to be successful. And now's the time to unwrap your gifts. Have an amazing day and see you soon. Bye.